So we'll wait. There's a couple board members not with us yet, so we'll wait a couple minutes. I've forgotten what a challenge it is to kind of keep track of who's in these boxes. I think we're just waiting for Pat.
And Pam was possibly not, right?
Correct.
I just sent Pat an email just in case, or an invite. There we go.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. So welcome to the September 13th, 2021 Town of Ithaca Board meeting. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for putting the flag up, Paula. That's great. And we will start with persons to be heard. So I'll raise your hand and I'll call on you and you can unmute yourself and you'll have 3. Marie, we're going to wait and have you talk when we actually get to that specific agenda item. So this is for other folks, but I'll call you when we're done with this. Bill and Caroline, go ahead. And are you each speaking? If so, you each get 3 minutes. Oh, you're on mute.
We're speaking on different topics.
Okay, so go ahead.
So I'm Caroline Arms, and I'm currently president of the Forest Home Improvement Association. And I'm going to speak about the Forest Home walkway. But before I do that, I would like to thank Joe Slater and his staff for their recent adjustments to signage in Forest Home with the objective of increasing safety for pedestrians and deterring trucks from using the hamlet as a shortcut. Recently, they've added legends to the stop signs at the bottom of Pleasant Grove Road, indicating that traffic already on the bridge will not stop, and removed the legend "Accept local delivery" from weight limit signs. We hope this will have a positive effect. We've also learned that a limit by vehicle length is being explored. We thank the Public Works Department for their responsiveness to the issues. As members of the board have heard before, the Forest Home Walkway is important to the community, used all year as a commuter route to the Cornell campus for exercise and for visiting neighbors. It is a much safer route than walking up and down Warren Road. The community is disappointed to hear that bids for the long-awaited reconstruction of the walkway came in over budget. We recognize that the town has financial constraints, but very much hope it will be possible to find funds to proceed with the work this fall as planned. If not, We strongly urge that the town make repairs to keep the walkway safe over the winter. In particular, we hope that the rope handrail that was removed from the lower section as part of a recent brush clearing effort in preparation for the reconstruction can be replaced, with support preferably reaching all the way to the corner where the flat section starts, a few feet further up than previously. Railings further up the walkway also need repair. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Caroline. And I believe now it's Bill's turn, correct? And Bill, as Caroline, you have 3 minutes.
It's a request to the board not to rush ahead with the proposal to create a Ithaca Landmarks Preservation Commission. For recent legislation, such as the Stream Setback Law and the Sustainability Code, the town has encouraged widespread discussion. For this new proposal, there have been no public discussions and minimal input from the owners of historic buildings. Please pause the process until everybody has a proper opportunity to understand and comment on the proposals. The legislation would mirror the wording of the city's revised ordinances. They have two fundamental problems: the uncontrolled power of the commission and the cumbersome procedures to carry out even minor changes. There are also serious conflicts with the town's green initiatives. First, the commission. Under the legislation, my house can be designated a historic building without my consent. My neighborhood can be designated a local historic district without me even knowing this is happening. But then the commission has enormous power over my house with no checks and balances. The commission sets the criteria for designating historic landmarks and the criteria for evaluating changes to the exterior. It has the sole power to approve or reject changes. The commission reports to nobody, unelected. If they abuse their power, they can be removed. Now, today's commission may be sympathetic to the practicalities of owning an older house, but similar commissions elsewhere have become dominated by people with unrealistic biases and prejudices. Next, the procedure. The legislation requires a certificate of appropriateness for every change, however small. For example, to replace a porch light fixture, a householder has to follow a bureaucratic process with no guarantee that the commission will decide that the light is appropriate. The commission has complete power. The guidelines are vague and can be changed at any time, and the commission makes the decisions. The only appeal is to the New York State Supreme Court. Energy. The town needs to reconcile the power of the commission with the goals of energy efficiency and sustainability. This is a real problem. The commission could well stop improvements such as replacing a rotten window, adding rooftop solar, or mounting a heat pump outside the building. My wife and I, Caroline and I, live in a historic building. The character of our community depends on people like us who value the neighborhood while we continually repair and upgrade our houses. This costs more money than if we lived in a subdivision, but we do it willingly. However, we do need to be able to make reasonable improvements without the burden of the proposed code. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And Bruce.
Hi, Bruce Britton. I wanted to pick up on what Caroline had mentioned. The Forest Home Walkway gets an extensive amount of pedestrian commuter usage. I noticed that the bids came in a little higher than you expected, but something has to be done this fall. Some of that rail has failed. Some has actually been removed, not only the rope, but the posts, a chain sawed off at ground level. So I don't think, that last hill is steep. It's treacherous as it is. You get ice on it, you need a handrail. I'm afraid if you just do nothing, it's going to be dangerous. If you close it for the winter, it's going to deflect pedestrian commuters to the Warren Road walkway, which is far more dangerous. So I'm hoping you can just grit your teeth and go ahead and get this project done. So that would be my hope. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Not seeing anyone raise their hands, so we'll move on. And for those of you who, if you can go watch us on YouTube now, that would be great. Just so there's less squares that I have to pay attention to. That would be greatly appreciated. So moving on to item number 3. This is a request from Maplewood EDR regarding a refund on water billing. I believe that we sent out the email that we had received. Marie Schnell is here with us. She's with Utility Advisors, and I believe, Marie, that means you're representing Greystar. So I've asked Marie, why don't you, I think it's better if you just state your case, and then we'll just come back to you if any board members have specific questions, but we'll have you state your case, and then Joe Slater will provide some additional information. And you'll have to unmute yourself, Marie.
Unmute. There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good evening. My name is Marie Schnall, and I'm with Utility Advisors. I am representing EDR Maplewood Apartments. I am actually the utility auditor for them, and they reached out to me when they had a problem with their most recent water bill back in May. I had put in a request for a simple sewer credit for that bill with Mr. Slater, and unfortunately, when he got back to me, I started doing a deeper dive into the billing, going back to the very beginning, and found that there was a problem with the billing from basically the inception. To give you a little bit more background to the board members that are unfamiliar with the property or the problem, it appears that during construction in 2017 that an underground pipe on the property had a small minor leak, and it went undiscovered during the underground rough inspection for the property during construction. It was covered up, construction went on, and the building went on to lease and fill up very, very quickly. It was actually fully occupied at the beginning of 2019. Fast forward, the property, I'm sure many of you have college-age children. It gets very busy, and management got busy moving children in and out. And billing came in, it got paid, etc. Spring forward to this most recent billing in May, and all hell broke loose on the water bill. They were contacted by a representative from Bolton Point, and they were able to get someone out to start doing the repairs to a pipe that they found underground. What's so concerning about this is that Bolton Point has a system in place through census that basically sends alarm bells when there is a constant stream of water to a property at 4 a.m., at 3 a.m. And this warning bell appears to have been going off for more than 36 months, according to what records I was able to find. I went back and I looked at Bolton Point's notes from their engineering meetings, and the property was named more than 20 times. And basically it stated that the occupancy continues to increase, so does their consumption. Occupancy continues to increase, so does consumption. It was even noted in March 19th that Ms. Van Gelder reported on this item, noted increasing consumption and revenue. in which a large percentage was attributed to Maplewood. Usage continues to increase. It just goes on and on. I mean, there's multiple times, multiple people, multiple members from both the operating committee there, Bolton Point, Ithaca, that should have potentially caught this problem way in advance. Before the property was constructed, there was a huge study done on the property to see what impact this would do to Ithaca and what water needs it would need. And the report basically came back, and I think it came up with 45,000 plus gallons per day that it would need. And doing the math on a spreadsheet earlier today, I mean, it's astronomical the amount of gallons that were wasted on this property, and could have been caught, should have been caught much, much sooner. I think that, you know, it's difficult, obviously, to go back and figure out what it should have been. I don't think it should have even been that high at 45,000 gallons per day. It should have been lower, but, you know, it's a good starting point. Respectfully, I'm requesting that the board look at all of the information that I've provided and provide some type of credit to this property that really should have been, the problem should have been caught much earlier, and it would have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, this ultimately, in some sense, gets passed on to the residents at some point. And these residents are, you know, impacted by COVID. You know, families are struggling, so it would certainly help. We would love to dial back those numbers on our reports so that the budget for next year, we're able to give them a real number for the water that's included in the rent amount. So I respectfully hope that you'll take a look at the information that I provided. Thank you.
And Marie, there might be questions. We'll call on you if there's specific questions, but Joe?
So I guess I'd like to point out first the local law in chapter 210-8 of any applicants. Any such application shall be filed within 60 days of the time of the applicant learns of the claimed error. As well as the town board may for good cause shown, extend the time for filing such application. If circumstances show the charges are patently unfair and that the applicant has a reasonable basis for not timely filing the application. I guess to speak to the numbers, it was the East Hill water study, and it was an estimate based on, so GHD could basically run a model, and Dan Tate could probably speak to that. I'll share a screen here. So can everyone see this, I hope?
Yeah, we can.
As any development comes in through the door, there is a demarcation point or an option for the developer to put in the utility to a basically a town of Ithaca standard. In this case, there was a demarcation point opted by the developer at the street, with coming through here into a building with a master meter and then distributing a water main through this complex to all these buildings. I guess I'd like to point out that in that case, the system is deemed private. And after that point, the town / Bolton Point has really no way of knowing what water usage is happening in this private system. Bolton Point's monitoring system is basically a courtesy. I think they reach out to any applicant or consumer and just let them know that, you know, based on what they've seen, that they have a high consumption. So I guess that's what I have to say to rebuttal.
And just, you know, I can't remember, oh, Dan, go ahead.
I just wanted to add a few more things. I think the GHD report was mentioned in this communication. Just keep in mind that the GHD report was done before this development was even established. It was an estimate of what might be. Obviously, what was built, we don't know the exact number of fixtures or the usage and all that. So that would explain why there might be some deviation or obvious deviation from a GHD report that was put together months before this development was even finalized, and what we see now. So that's what I have to say about the GHG report now. So.
Okay. And truthfully, I can't remember if we sent everything out to the board that we received. But the figure that I got I think I just got it from Joe today, was that the total requested credit is $481,270. So there might be some info that came in today that the board hasn't seen, but let's see what questions the board might have. Rich?
In the initial construction phase, when the pipes are laid, the water system is laid out, who, if anyone, is responsible for determining that installation is up to snuff? I mean, the allegation is that this pipe has been leaking since it was constructed. Who ultimately looks at that during the construction phase and signs off on it?
Dan or Joe?
I don't know if you want to take this. I just, when it comes to a development that, when a development comes through the door, there's a big decision that's made, and Joe mentioned that. Is it going to be a private system or is it going to be a public system? In this case, the developer chose that it was going to be private. So like Joe said, they chose to install it not to a town standard. At that point in time, yes, Bolton Point in the town, we were out there doing inspections on the buildings, code enforcement inspections. And there was periodic spot inspections just to make sure the bedding was the right bedding for the water pipe. That was probably the extent. Beyond that, it's the responsibility of the developer's engineer to make sure that everything is going in according to plan and it's being constructed properly. And then the health department gets involved and makes sure that the pressure testing and all the testing and the disinfection is adequate. So in this case, the town of Ithaca and Bolton Point really had minimal oversight over the system, just because the decision that was made up front was that this was going to be a private system and not a public system.
Okay, so I have one more follow-up question. Just so I'm clear, is the request for water usage or sewer charge or a combination thereof?
Joe, do you want to answer that?
I think the initial request was for sewer reduction, and now it's kind of amplified into an over water usage. Is that correct, Marie?
Yes. And if I could respond to the reason for the private system, as you would call it, is that college housing is typically water and sewer and electricity are included in the rent. And so it's therefore not necessary for ownership to install individual water meters for every unit. The anticipation that it's always going to be college housing there. And that is the reason why it was chosen to go that route. So it wasn't trying to avoid it or make it a public system. It was really for that.
So just so I can finish my line of inquiry here, do both parties stipulate to some degree that the water usage, that some percentage of the water that's currently, for which we're currently being asked to refund payment, did not enter the sanitary sewer? Do we agree to that, or do we have no way of knowing at this point? Has there been subsequent evidence of a leak, the magnitude of which could have attributed to this charge. I guess what I'm saying is, could we potentially consider some kind of a sewer credit, but not a water credit? If that's, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there as a hypothetical.
I think that you could consider a sewer credit, but I don't know how you would, I don't know how you would quantify that.
Yeah, I was going to say it would be interesting, and time would tell, right? So apparently the leaks that we know about are fixed, right? So now that they're fixed, and students are occupying these premises, and it's the same number of students, I'm guessing, that when there was a leak. So you could start to compare the data long term to see how much actually went in the ground. But that is, it's a very hard, that's a guesstimate. It's not exact science by any means.
Susan, whenever I see your head shaking, do you want to say something, Susan?
Oh, thank you. Well, I think because we were in the pandemic last year, the graduate and professional students weren't necessarily in the labs, in the classrooms. They were in their apartments. And I think the Bolton Point reports showed that various apartment buildings, not complexes, not just Maplewood, all had increased usage because people were staying in their homes. So I think it'd be very hard to, start to try to figure out what was the actual usage within the apartments at Maplewood. It just would be a difficult thing to do because I think that consumption was higher, and I don't want the town to undercount what was actually used at Maplewood when there weren't as many people in person. Also, Bolton Point did notify Maplewood or Greystar in May of 2020 by email that their consumption was high. And that, they were told these are really high numbers. And I don't know what the communications were after that, but it doesn't look like Greystar did anything about it for over a year. Also, GHD's report undercounted the number of beds that ended up being built by at least a third. So and Maplewood's last certificate of occupancy wasn't issued until late in 2019. So it would have been very natural for Bolton Point to see rising consumption in 2020 because it wasn't fully occupied until after that last certificate of occupancy was issued. So there are just many factors here. It's not that Bolton Point or the town didn't notify them. They did notify them. They notified them in May of 2020. They notified them again in February of 2021. And so I think you're going to have to look at whether under the town code, there's a good reason for why they didn't apply for the credit sooner once they learned that there was a probable leak back in May of 2020. And yet they're just coming to you now and they didn't do anything about it as far as we know for over a year.
Rich, before you chime in, I think at TN, was that a mistake? I saw a thumbs up in your square for a while. Did you want to say anything? Okay.
There was a follow-up question. Is that the packet that we received with the email correspondence doesn't have this email that you just referenced from May of 2020. It begins in February of 2021. So it's a little bit, that changes everything as far as I'm concerned. And so it would be helpful to me to see the initial email that was sent out. I don't know why that was omitted from the packet. Anyway, that's all
I just learned of it this afternoon.
Yeah, I think we got additional information today.
Thank you.
Eric?
Okay, I have a question about, are we the right party to be requested of this waiver? So it is alleged that Bolton Point should have done more. Not that any town employees have done more. Does Bolton Point waive fees, or does it always go through the town and the town residents have to eat that, pay that back? So basically spreading the costs to all the town residents, but nowhere else.
It's the municipality decides. Bolton Point doesn't decide.
Mhm. So Bolton Point's going to charge us for that water. And the water, it's not a billing error. The water was provided by a defective system that even if it wasn't noticed, it was Bolton Point employees who should have noticed it. But from what Susan just said, it was noticed. So
Basically what happens, Eric, is, excuse me, I'm getting some feedback here, sorry. Bolton Point charges the municipalities a rate, and then we tack on a little bit on top of that to pay for the operation and maintenance of the system. So the water did go through the meter, and we are paying for that water as a municipality.
right. So we're paying for the water, but are we paying for sewage too, based on that water usage? There's no way the town could get charged any less for that. We're going to
There's no way to quantify that.
Right.
Bill, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, just to expand a little bit on that, just, for everybody's, or the town board members who aren't as familiar with the water and sewer systems and billing as those of us who are on Bolton Point or on the SJC. So yeah, the town gets billed by Bolton Point for, the water that's metered. And so this water, was metered through the meter. And so the town got billed by Bolton Point for that. And then we also, tack on our own charges for our own distribution system. Because, once we get the water from Bolton Point system, then we send it through our pipes. And so we tack on a charge for that. So the water, did go through our pipes. It was metered. So generally in the past, when we've gotten requests like this, we don't usually give a break on the water. Sometimes, so the sewer charges are similar. The sewer plant, which we co-own with the city and town of Dryden, bills us based upon the water consumption. So all this water that went through the meter was reported to the sewer treatment plant, and we were billed and paid the sewer treatment plant for all the water that went through this. And then again, we tack on our own charge on top of that for our own sewer pipes and our own sewer system. So sometimes when homeowners have come to us in the past and said, oh, I went out of town and my outdoor hose connection burst and water was flowing out onto the ground, if they could prove to us that, the town, the water was flowing out on the ground and not going down the sewer system, we might give them a break on the town's portion of that fee, the sewer fee, because we'd already paid the sewer treatment plant the money that we got billed based upon that consumption. So we'd already paid that money out to the sewer treatment plant and would not be getting it back. But usually that would, just be a small credit we would give them then for a very small portion of the bill based upon the town's upcharge on the sewer. And so, I haven't analyzed all of the requests or emails in detail now, but if we were to consider anything, that's all that I would ever consider. But again, it's incumbent upon the user to keep track of things. When we first went to the system, the automatic metering system for Bolton Point, everybody started to complain a little bit. Oh, well, you should have known that I had a leak because you were being, notified that my usage was going up. And Bolton Point just doesn't have the personnel to monitor all the 7,000 accounts in the system to find out, who's having abnormal usage. It's incumbent upon each water user to monitor their own system and keep on top of that. So I'm not really, swayed by that argument. But as I said, I haven't figured out exactly what I might consider, but it would, if I did consider anything, it would only be a very small credit for a small portion of the sewer charge based upon, when we were notified. And so I'd need to be looking at the dates of the various emails and the time period involved. As Joe, I think, mentioned at the beginning, normally we only, would go back 60 days or 2 months.
So I think the key question is, since some new information arrived today, does the board want to make sure everyone gets all the information to take a look at it? Do we want to refer this to Public Works Committee and ask them to make a recommendation back to the board, or just bring it directly back to the board? So what's the preference?
I think there's a significant enough amount of money involved here that I would benefit from seeing the complete record. I mean, it just makes sense if someone is making an appeal that we have the entire record in front of us to review.
And I see some other people shaking their heads yes. So given that, do we refer it to Public Works, or do we just bring it back directly to the full board?
I think because it's a complicated enough situation that it would benefit from the closer attention by those folks who are more intimately involved with these, the water and sewer system. So I would suggest Public Works.
Tiana, are you okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so
Yes.
no decision tonight. We'll refer it to Public Works Committee. We'll make sure that everyone gets the complete set of information. Susan?
I think it'd be important just to state for the record that by referring it to Public Works Committee, the town board is not waiving its right to find that the timeframes in the town code are expired. And that the applicant hasn't shown a reasonable basis for not timely filing the application.
Thank you for stating that.
So it's going to Public Works, but it could be that the town board may end up making that finding, that they're not waiving the right to make that finding.
Okay. Anything else on this for tonight? So Marie, stay tuned.
I will stay tuned. Thank you, board, for taking a look at this for me. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Good evening.
Moving on to water again. So we're moving on to a resolution to approve a refund of water charges to the town of Ulysses. I think that we've referenced this briefly before. The total amount that we would be refunding to the town of Ulysses is $24,468.02. Joe, do you want to just give a little bit of background?
Certainly. 2003-ish, I believe, is when the town of Ulysses hooked onto the town of Ithaca's water system and became a town of Ithaca water customer. At that time, there was an agreement made with a master water meter at the Wolf Lane pump station. And to my knowledge, the way that was billed was basically the master water meter was read. The town of Ithaca customers and the town of Ithaca municipality, their meter readings were subtracted from that total. And the bill was sent to the town of Ulysses for the remainder. Sometime in 2011, that agreement was amended and it incorporated a water loss calculation. And I think the formula had something to do with the totality of the pipe and how much was in each municipality, as well as being able to incorporate some of the residential and commercial meter readings from the town of Ulysses. I think it went back to 2015 that we were supposed to amend this yearly. It was overlooked. When it came to my staff, we kind of went through it with a fine-tooth comb and found that there were 7 accounts in the town of Ithaca that were not being put on the bill. That was a major portion of this reconciliation, being about $11,000. The rest of it was a water loss calculation that we did owe to the town of Ulysses based on the amendment in 2011. So to sum it up, that's, the monetary value that they are owed.
So questions? Nancy, this is why you're on, right, for this topic? I think Nancy's listening for it. I think she's with Ulysses. So questions, comments? If not, would someone like to move the resolution? I saw Tien's hand first. Would someone like to second it? Eric. No further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Okay, it's unanimous. Thanks, Joe, for your work on this. Tien, do you have a what? Okay. There's a hand up in your little corner, Tien. That's why I keep asking. Moving on to, we're setting a whole bunch of public hearings for September 27th.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly mention I think there's 7 here. Proposed local law to amend chapters 270 and 271 of the Town of Ithaca Code to provide a planned development zone for the Chainworks District. Second is proposed acquisitions of real property for public parks and playgrounds. 3 is proposed local law to install stop signs at Wildflower Drive, Strawberry Hill Circle. Next is amending the Southern Cuba Lake Intermunicipal Water Commission agreement, increasing the water rate charges effective January 1st, 2022. Next is the adoption of the Southern Cuba Lake Intermunicipal Water Commission 2022 budget. Next is approval of the 2021 assessment rolls for the Town of Ithaca Special Benefit Districts and Special Benefit Areas. And last is approval of the proposed increases to Town of Ithaca water rates and sewer rents effective January 1st. So I know we don't normally do public hearings during our study session, but we're not anticipating there being a lot of members of the public that will want to address us. If they do, that's fine, but we're not anticipating that. So we felt fairly comfortable. And this was also partly to stay on track with the different public hearings related to our budget. So would someone like to approve the resolution for setting these public hearings?
I'll move.
Well, and then I saw Pat's hand second. Any questions or comments?
I have a question. These are set for 5:30. Is that correct? So our study sessions typically start at 4:30.
The meeting will start at 4:30, but we'll open the public hearings at 5:30.
Yeah, my only concern is that the Chainworks item is probably the most one of the more consequential of the public hearings potentially, and I just want to make sure that the public has adequate opportunity to participate. And so the question that I was asking is, given that we're going to be virtual, I imagine for the next couple of meetings, it doesn't really make a difference whether we do it at a study session or at 5:30 at a regular board meeting. That was my only concern. And if we're in agreement that it's not going to infringe on anyone's ability to participate, I'm okay with it. So,
okay. Any other comments? All those in favor of setting the public hearings for September 27th, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Unanimous. Moving on to number 6. This is approval of and authorization for the supervisor to sign an MOU between the Town of Ithaca and the Cuba Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization. Just remember too that there is a new due structure that I don't know that it's referenced here, but we shared the due structure at the last meeting when Liz made her presentation. So would someone like to move the resolution?
I'd move it.
Dan, is there a second? Yeah, seconds. Questions, comments? All those in favor of the authorizing me to sign this agreement, raise your hand or say aye. Unanimous.
See, you know, when I raise my hand, my computer knows I raise my hand and it puts that little message down there about I'm raising my hand.
You have a smart computer.
It's very bizarre. So excuse me, so I'll try to be vocal. I won't raise my hand. It's a little confusing.
Moving on to number 7, discuss town of Ithaca water storage requirement. This is more to give a brief update. And I know that Susan was looking into whether we needed to do a seeker. So I don't know, Susan, if you have any more information about that. Dan, did you want to say anything in terms of a brief update, and then Susan can let us know what she found out?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Rod, I'll just give a quick, just for folks that weren't at the Public Works Committee where we discussed in length some of this. I'll share my screen very quickly.
So the plan was to have a resolution, but we pulled that because we're still trying to figure out what steps we may need to go through.
That's correct. You're absolutely correct. We were going to try to do a resolution today, but I think we just need to study seeker a little bit, the environmental impacts of what we're doing here before we actually do that. So, but just real quick, historically, the town of Ithaca, we've had a 3-day water storage requirement in our system. And we've talked about for years, just, is this excessive? And recently we took a new look at things. We have our water models. So anyways, our 3-day storage requirement that we currently have in place, we did find out that historically was set by the Dan Walker era, and it was during an emergency management plan. And it all related to how quickly staff could get around town to fill water tanks with our 2 portable pumps that we have. In this day and age, Bolton Point has put in a lot of backup generators in their systems so they can make water and feed us water. And starting next year, we're actually going to be putting in backup generators in a few of our water pump stations as well. And what that does is if the power grid goes out for an extended period of time, it does allow us to get to feed customers throughout the town without having to trailer around a pump. So it severely reduces the amount of time that it would take staff to keep our system full. So real quick here, we did talk to the health department, and we understand from them that the actual standard that is set in New York State is that it's 10 state standards right here in front of you. And that consists of water storage facilities that hold the domestic demands and the fire flow demands. So we quickly went through and calculated what that is. As you can see below by a lot of the data on the spreadsheet. We felt personally that requirement was quite small. It did allow for quite a number of dwellings to be built, and we felt that reducing the amount of water storage to that minimal requirement would maybe leave us in a situation where we might have a problem and not be able to fix it in time. So we thought that the best alternative was to come up with 1-day storage plus 10 state standards on top of it. And the one-day storage requirement comes from just our historic work that we've done on our system. When we have water main breaks or we have distribution issues, 24 hours is the maximum, knock on wood, that we would need to really rectify that situation. So we took 1-day storage plus the 10 state standards is what our minimum requirement is here in town. So this next spreadsheet, we did some number crunching, and you guys can take some time and absorb the numbers here. But basically, we have the current town of Ithaca 3-day storage requirement calculated. We basically have the available storage for each tank, and then we have the demand. And we subtract the 2, and we come up with the remaining storage in the tank, and then we calculate how many dwellings can be built based on that. So we did that for each standard. And The standard that we're proposing to pass here or take a look at would be the 1-day storage plus 10 state standards. So on the very right-hand side of the chart, you can see the number of dwellings that can be built if we modify our current standard to this new standard. In relation to the left-hand side of the chart, which has our current 3-day storage requirement. One last thing to note, if we go down this road, and this is something that we like, it could potentially save a significant amount of money for us as far as having to build water tanks, especially for the areas of town that we're promoting development, that being the new neighborhood code regions, South Hill, West Hill. By changing this requirement, we can instantly have available storage in our system to build out some of these developments without spending millions of dollars to upgrade. So that's about it, Rod, that I wanted to just quickly go through. And lastly, there's a sheet here that kind of simplifies everything. If you're a visual person, it gives you a color-coded map of the tank zones throughout town, and it gives you the number of, with the new standard that we're going for, which is 1-day storage plus 10 state standards, it gives you the number of dwellings that can be built in each of those tank zones.
Okay, and Susan, I don't know if you've done further investigation and you know what you want to recommend in terms of a process for us?
I'm still looking at that, so I don't really have an answer yet as to whether seeker is required.
And so certainly the Public Works Committee, as Dan just said, has looked at this, and we wanted to bring it to the town board, but we pulled the resolution until we get some further information. Any questions in the meantime? You'll be seeing this again. Okay, so stay tuned. You may see it at the study session. Who knows? We'll see. Moving on to number 8. This is acceptance of dedication of phase 3 and phase 4 sanitary sewer infrastructure associated with the Westview 32 lot subdivision, Chickle Road, and authorization to sign associated easement. There's some minor changes that I think Paulette's already made that you guys don't have, but that Susan was catching. I don't think there's anything that changes the nature of what you're voting on. Yeah, so I'm not going to bother going through the fairly minor changes. So would someone like to move the resolution? Eric, is there a second? I'll second. Comments, questions? Okay, if we're ready to vote, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Moving on to the Forest Home Walkway. So we'll start with first, Dan, do you want to just refresh folks' memory, or actually update folks on the 2 bids that we did get? And we actually may have a recommendation to just wait and rebid in the spring. But Dan, why don't you say why we might not even talk about maybe accepting the lowest bid at this point?
Yes, so we went through a lengthy process with Cornell to obtain the offsite easements associated with this project. And in doing so, this project slid further and further into the year. Now here we are. We actually bid, I would say, just to be open and honest, we did not bid at the optimal time of year. We bid when contractors are not hungry. They're all lined up with work. We had several contractors ask us if this could be built in the springtime. Obviously, we could not tell them either way because of the bidding environment that we're in. So we had 6 bid holders, and we had 2 bids that actually came in. The low bid was for roughly $285,000. Our budget was for $240,000. So right there, we're roughly $45,000 over our budget. So the low bid contractor we have not worked with before. We've been actively trying to, Susan, maybe help me make sure they're a responsive bidder, if that's the right word, and checking their references. And
Responsible. is the word.
responsible. I had to guess between the two, and so we've been checking their references, and they did not give us references. They gave us references, but they did not get specific on whether they were working on trails or not. We reached out to them again. They gave us a few more, and we have not had luck trying to nail down these references for this particular contractor. So we're kind of working through that right now a little bit with no luck, but they're the low bidder. So that's the issue right now is, do we go with a low bidder that we have not had experience with, and marginal references, or and then the other topic I just wanted to briefly mention is even if we did accept this contractor, will they be able to construct this year? Our other projects, we know we have hold up on materials. This project has a metal hand railing. It has precast concrete stairs. These things are backed up at the present moment. So even if we did accept a low bid, we can't even say that this project would be completed this year. So the question is, that I've been asked is, do we wait until the optimal bid season, which is during the winter months when the contractors are trying to line up work for the next season, and rebid? I can say right now with the current environment, I can't guarantee that we're going to get a lower bid, but we will get most likely more bids. So that's the dilemma that we're trying to weigh.
I'll throw in the mix before we open up for discussion. So there has been some discussion about what was raised by Forest Home residents about, well, if there's a decision to delay, we want to make sure that people can go up and down safely. Is there a way to reinstall the rope and whatnot? And Joe and Dan, I think there's been some conversations that we feel that we should be able to do some of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've talked with Joe Talbot real quick, but the rope was removed. I'm just giving you some examples. The rope can be reinstalled. I understand they wanted the rope to extend a little further up the trail. So there is some minor work. The existing handrail is extremely in bad repair. So we'd have to quickly look at that, maybe do some quick reinforcement here or there, just to make it passable for the winter months.
Yeah, I was taking note of that as Bruce was talking. I mean, I know that there's some handrails and such that have been cut, but we can definitely get in there and make some temporary safety measures if needed.
So what's before you is we haven't been able to get as much information about the low bidder as we had wanted. We're not sure that they have trail experience. So there's that question, and the question as to whether it's best to just delay as long as we can go in and make it somewhat safe to, not somewhat safe, safe to go up and down during the winter if we bid again. So thoughts, questions? Pat?
Yeah, I definitely think as long as we can make some repairs to make it safe during the winter, usable and safe during the winter, I think we should do that. And yeah, I'd be very uncomfortable going with a low bidder who can't give decent references and we've never worked with before. And I think we should bid during the optimal time. Probably consider increasing our budget since the cost of everything has gone up with the pandemic. So we need to be realistic about that. But yeah, my main concern was getting the basic necessary repairs done over the winter. So if we can do that, I sure don't want to rush into awarding a contract to a bidder that we know nothing about and might not do a good job.
By the way, Dan, wasn't it going to be more than 40 because you were going to factor in some additional contingency as well?
That's correct. If we go with the current low bidder, we need an additional $75,000 just to cover contingency costs.
Okay, thanks. Rich?
Even if we were to forge ahead with either this bidder or the next responsible bidder, there's no guarantee that they would be able to mobilize and do the job and finish it by winter anyway. I mean, things are kind of getting kind of late in the season anyhow, right? So
Right.
That's correct. Yeah.
yeah. So to me, that's probably the determining factor, is that we could rush ahead in an attempt to finish it and end up without a functional trail in the winter anyway. So
Other comments? Eric? Eric,
Yeah.
I see you have an extra I in your name.
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a typo. I'll fix it in a moment. So, and I agree with everything that Pat and Rich say. It seems that based on what Dan said, it's very unlikely that this is going to be done with materials backed up like this. So if we did go ahead, it's like we're paying a premium price for probably what's going to be a long process anyway. So it sounds like we should just slow down and get a better bidding process and more people involved, more bidders involved to add more reasonable price, hopefully.
Anyone else? Bill?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree that we should wait until the spring and just do the temporary safety measure for now for the wintertime use. And I'm also concerned, like Rich, about even if we did award it, it might not get done this fall.
So I think and I agree, I think there's consensus to hold off then and rebid. So Dan, when would that likely go out if that's what we do?
It's every contractor you ask these type of questions, you get a different answer, but the bid window would probably be like December through, January, February. In that range is probably when you want to bid it. In the heart of winter time after the holidays is when they're really starting to look. So that might be when we would aim for. I mean, the good news on all this is, we've got easements locked down. We've got everything locked down. So the hard part is done. So we just have to get some good bids now. So.
Okay, so we're holding off on that, but we still do need to, so the item number 10, we still want to move forward on because this has to do with the easements and the permissive referendum. So I think that we still want to do that approval. So would someone like to move the resolution having to do with the easements and the easements primarily? Bill, is there a second? Tian, I saw Tian's hand. So questions, comments? Tian, are you talking to us? Okay, I was trying to read those hand signals. But I do have you seconding the resolution. Is that okay? Okay. Any questions, comments about the resolution? Is there anything we need to change to it since we're not moving forward on the awarding the bid in this resolution? Or is it?
Yeah, Rod, I would just quickly.
No, I'm pretty sure we did it, Susan. Susan went through it so that item 10 was really strictly for
Okay.
the permissive referendum with an up to amount.
Gotcha. Dan, were you saying something?
Yeah, I think Paulette just answered. I was just looking at the reso to make sure it didn't mention the contractor in there.
Okay.
Which I believe it doesn't here. So.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor of the resolution, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Let's see, we're moving on to number 12. So this is a resolution regarding requiring mandatory vaccination and/or surveillance testing. Judy, I know you and I had talked about putting, well, we'll talk about it, but we might, if we decide to move forward on this, we might want to put an effective date. But let's see if somebody wants to first move the resolution. Eric, is there a second? I'll second. So questions, comments, discussion. By the way, this pretty much follows what, we've been keeping track of what the county is doing. This has been a discussion at P&O. Hopefully you saw, we did a survey. We asked, not a survey, we asked employees for input, and Judy sent out the summary of those responses that we got back. So comments, questions, discussion? Oh, the other thing I'll say is that, I don't know that it says it in here, but the county is pretty sure they're going to pick up all the costs. I think, Judy, what did they say? They have to wait till some meeting in October just to make sure that the legislature passes this, but they would continue to cover the costs for not just our employees, but all municipality employees that they're requiring surveillance testing of. So that's good news for us, because before we thought we were going to have to enter our own contract with the Ithaca Medical Center, and it was going to be, it starts to add up. So it's great that the county is considering doing that. And so if we add an effective date, I think we're going to have to do it post, is it like October 5th, Judy? Do you remember?
Yeah. So the county legislature is supposed to take it up October 5th at the latest. They were trying to see if it could go end of September. They were hoping for a October 1st start of their program. So we would just be able to start as soon as effective, authorized by the legislature. And we'd be following their procedures, their process aspect of the procedure.
The employees wouldn't even have to go anywhere. They would, at each facility would be the packet that they use. It's a saliva test. And we would get it to the drop-off sites that the county is managing. So it's going to be for those employees who do choose to do the weekly surveillance testing. It's going to be pretty easy. Questions, comments?
Well,
Yeah.
one question. What is the reliability of the saliva test? It's not a PCR test, right? Or is it?
I have no idea. Judy, do you know?
I know it's one of the tests that they've been doing at the testing sites that was downtown. So I believe it's.
They've been doing the saliva testing for months and months and months.
Right. I mean, if it's a PCR test, that's fine. It's the other quickie antigen tests that are not very reliable.
Right. No,
Okay.
it's not one of those.
Right.
So it's the PCR. Okay, I'm happy.
It still has to go to the lab.
Yeah.
Somebody else had their hand up. Rich?
So I did read, looked over all the comments, and I was wondering, did anybody go to the extent of sort of trying to determine how the employees broke, one way or the other? Was there a prevailing sentiment? It seemed fairly evenly split to me about the issue, at least regarding the issue of mandatory vaccinations. And there was also a fairly significant number of folks who felt that, now this may not be supported by science, but who felt that even individuals who are vaccinated can still carry and spread the virus, and so everybody should be tested. So, was there any consideration given to that approach to testing?
Yeah, we will certainly encourage vaccinated employees to keep track of, if they start to feel anything, to be tested. The county's not, we are following what the county's doing. The county is really focusing on surveillance testing for those who aren't vaccinated. Judy, do you want to add anything to that?
Right, they're still requesting that anybody who has any symptoms or that aspect to follow up with their doctors or do the testing at the mall site, not through the surveillance testing. The surveillance testing is supposed to be really for asymptomatic folks.
Right, but any town staff can avail themselves of this testing, whether they're vaccinated or not. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, yes.
And my only other line of inquiry would have to do with the. There was one comment that sort of resonated with me about the idea that people who aren't vaccinated, who subsequently get sick and have to take 10 days off of work, for example, that they not be given paid time. And was there discussion of that, or any kind of attention paid to the fact that maybe you're potentially increasing your the likelihood that you're going to need an extended amount of time off from work? And how does that square with our sick policy in general? As long as someone has enough days, they're allowed to be sick for whatever reason they're sick.
Yeah, I'll let our HR person address that.
Well, we're still following, we're voluntarily following, if somebody's put in mandatory quarantine, we're still following the extended FMLA, which means we cover them without the use of their fringe time for that mandatory quarantine. We've been doing that right along. I wouldn't suggest changing that. You have people who are vaccinated that could be put into quarantine too. So, are you going to separate? You're going to, pay them not out of their sick time, but you're not going to pay the vaccinated. I'm not sure we want to get into that, but the personnel committee has not discussed that at all, Rich.
Well, I mean, you're drawing a line between two classes of people, vaccinated and unvaccinated, with respect to fringe time. But we've already done that with respect to surveillance testing. So the line, we're already drawing lines. It's just a question of where are we comfortable drawing them, right? So, okay, I guess those were my only questions. And just because I'm staring at you all you beautiful people, I don't see the reso. How many? We talking about twice a week testing or once a week, or how is this? Once a week, okay. Thanks.
And maybe we can just say, add to it, instead of giving a date, just say, well, I don't know, I guess let's give a date. Judy, what would you suggest we use in terms of making this effective?
Well, I'd like to say October 1st, with the expectation that if we can't start it October 1st because the legislature hasn't approved it, then we'll start it thereafter. But that's when they're starting theirs, and I know they're trying to get a meeting in the end of September.
If you're okay with us letting work on the language, we'll say October 1st with the expectation that the county has approved this, and if not, as soon as, and then we'll come up with the right language. Are people okay with it? We're using October 1st as a target date with some variables related to that.
Just one more question, if I might, which is the cost associated with testing, and multiplied by the number of people who are expected to require mandatory testing.
The county is going to pick up the cost.
So, okay.
That's what we're 99%.
Which means we're going to pick up the cost, We're just not going to do it
Well, I
directly.
think they're using their FEMA funding.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Which means we're going to pick up the cost
Oh.
as individuals. But okay, never mind. I'm sorry.
And some of the details on the process still have to be worked through with Teamsters. So
I have one question. I'm assuming then that the staffing that the county provides for these testing, if this great number of testing is enough to cover it. It sounds like a lot of people will be getting testing now, and that's not an issue for the personnel resources that the lab that the county has. They can still provide as much testing as is needed.
Yeah, we did have a conversation with
Amy.
Amy. She just said that some of us have received our results back in a matter of 5 or 6 hours. She just said it might be more like a day and a half. It might extend the time that the results come back.
Yeah, I only ask because I researched this because Keith needed a procedure test, and he was unable to get one in Tompkins County. And so we had to drive 4 hours round trip to Rochester for him to get a test, a nasopharyngeal test. No one does now. Apparently because of not enough staffing. They don't have licensed medical staff to provide a nasopharyngeal test because the executive order on that expired or something. But it has led to some kind of personnel shortages for different kinds of tests. The immediate care facility will only test for people who are symptomatic. They're not doing other kinds of COVID tests. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a little concerned about the number of tests that these policies are generating and whether there's the staffing to back it up. That's all.
It hasn't been raised as an issue in the conversations that we've had. And, we did share the number of unvaccinated staff. It's a pretty low number with the town. And I know they're trying to they've asked each municipality to call them to give them a sense of how many individuals might we be talking about. So I think they're factoring that in.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Anything else? So I think we did. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
I just wanted to confirm that anyone could get tested down here. I was just kind of spinning off of what Rich had said with some of the employees that are vaccinated and could still contract COVID. Winter is kind of the months where we're in close quarters and in vehicles, and I didn't know if that monetary value has been explored as far as people that want to get tested down here that are vaccinated. Is just confirming that is an option.
Yeah, Judy, my understanding is that there might be a slight preference. So say I traveled someplace that was high, that they might prefer if I come back and was concerned that I would go to the mall to be tested. But I think there is the option of also doing this test that will be available at each of our sites. Is that your understanding, Judy?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely, Amy definitely explained it that they are in favor of vaccinated folks getting tested. But if it is because they have symptoms or they feel like they've been exposed, they do want them to go to the mall and not go through this surveillance testing. But if it's just a matter of once a week, some of our vaccinated staff want to do a surveillance testing. They had no objection to that.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we already had a first and a second on this, correct?
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. It's unanimous, correct? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda items, and we did add, I think we got sent out today, the appointment of a new court clerk. And the 2 minutes are August 9th and 23rd. Is that correct, Paulette? That got sent out. So would someone like to move the consent agenda? Eric, would someone, who wants to second? Tian, any discussion? All those in favor of the consent agenda, say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Next is consider entering executive session to discuss the acquisition of real property where disclosure could affect the price.
I'll move that.
Is there a second? Eric seconds. All those in favor? Aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
And so Paulette, you'll stop the YouTube recording.